Cath Lab team is running together. Are you running together or?
No, I wouldn't say it's quite so formal. But I would say first of all that they were my inspiration. So a number of the technologists and a few of the nurses in the cath lab mentioned in August that they were going to do. I think each of us is actually doing the half marathon.
Right.
So it's a half marathon and a full marathon event, but each of us is doing the half. And so there was a little, not necessarily peer pressure, but they encouraged me to do it because they know that I've sort of been in fitness, in CrossFit, which many of them were also doing. And so after a period of weeks and tossing it back and forth in my mind, I decided to jump in to the process.
And oh, by the way, do you know how many folks total we're talking about with the cath lab, the nurses?
There are probably more than I'm aware of, but of the cath lab people, let me just do a little mental head count. I think it is. So there's Joseph, Freeler, Jennifer, Mike Busquet. They may, and Fitzgerald, that I'm aware of. There actually, and what's his name? Milkos, 1, 2, 3. So at least 6.
Okay.
Then not in the cath lab. I know Libby Watts, who's a vascular surgeon, as you know.
Oh yeah.
But she's not in the cath lab, but she's doing the half, and she.
Oh great.
So at least 6 in our area, and there are probably dozens of others throughout the health system, and maybe even others in the cath lab that I'm unaware of. But
Well, that's
but
encouraging.
at least 6.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you started training in around August.
Exactly.
Which is generally when people need to start, I guess, training.
Yeah.
Tell me about just generally your experience. Is this your first half marathon? Or?
This is, yeah.
I know you're into, of course, CrossFit, which is short circuit training type of
Exactly.
exercises.
Right.
So I mean, you're in probably great shape. So, but tell me the challenges that you've unexpectedly come up with in terms of training for the half marathon.
Right. So I think one thing it highlighted to me is that certainly exercise in general is good. It's good for the heart, good for the joints, good for the bones and whatnot. But fitness in one domain doesn't necessarily transfer into fitness in another. So I felt very unfit for running, even though I was quote-unquote fit generally. So it doesn't immediately translate. So just because I think you are perhaps good at baseball doesn't mean you could have the endurance to be a runner or vice versa, or just because you're an awesome swimmer, maybe you're not going to be a great runner or great at CrossFit. And I think, it's different activities, even though they promote fitness, don't necessarily promote the same types of endurance, and certainly using different muscle groups. So obviously running has a lot to do with your legs, leg muscles, your joints, as well as your endurance. So I learned that lesson very quickly. But I thought, all right, well, this shouldn't be too hard. And then it was hard. And I think pacing yourself is very important. So I have gone through it so far relatively uninjured, although I did have some pain and discomfort in my right Achilles tendon very early in the process. And that I learned subsequently is very common,
Right. Yeah.
and probably just reflects overuse or your body just not being used as much as you're asking it to for that particular tendon.
Right.
And I think I also learned that you have to be creative in finding the time. So my training program involved mainly running up to 6 times a week, some weeks 5 times, and being creative about when you run. So sometimes, I would always do my exercise mostly in the morning before work because that's the least disruptive time. But some of the workouts called for some treadmill work. I also live close enough to Tropical Park that I could use their track. So sometimes I'd run at work between things, maybe leaving the hospital and going to the office. I'd do 40 minutes on the treadmill at the hospital. So you get creative in your time.
Right.
And then the other thing I learned about through this process was sort of the nutrition of running. So I always assumed, well, you have to eat something before exercising, but there's certainly a school of thought that says exercising on an empty stomach sort of trains your body to utilize its fat stores, and that for an endurance activity is better to have your body used to using your own fat stores than having to be reliant on a quick burst of glucose. So all those types of things were, and then just the general notion of getting a little bit more in tune with understanding your basal heart rate and knowing how to get yourself back into what I would say is a safe zone. So if you're running very hard and you're tired, just knowing that, well, if I slow it down a notch, I'll get into that comfort zone where I can go for a long distance, maybe not the fastest, but for the longest. So a lot of things were learned over the process, and the importance of just weather conditions. So running in the heat is a totally different thing than running in cool weather or early in the morning, running in sunshine, running dehydrated versus being well hydrated.
Right.
So all of those things were learned, and then the mental aspects of sort of the monotony of running for miles at a time and managing your thoughts and staying motivated.
That's great. I think you covered a lot right there, and I know I know you did, and those are great points, especially overuse injuries, potential injuries versus what your experience with CrossFit. But this is overuse potential, and Achilles I know is very common, and in terms of for folks. And by the way, there's a study that just came out on this month about first-time marathoners and how improve their vascular age, if you will, quote vascular age, and reduce stiffness in the aorta and decrease systolic blood pressure by a few points. So as a doctor, of course, in your medical training, you know that this is good for you as long as you can, you take precautions and you have underlying general good health for training. Tips that you would give, like people like yourself with a first time half marathon or marathon for the race, and I know nutrition and hydration are probably at the top of the list. Any quick 2 or 3 best tips you could give for the first time marathoner out there?
So I would say make sure you start slowly. So so number 1, start slowly. Number 2, use some type of training program. Don't just do it on your own. Now it could be from a book, it could be from a running group. There are several in the community, or it could be from friends or family who are good at it. So having a training program that you follow, the advantage of that, it will help you guard against just overdoing it too soon. Because I think that's the quickest way to get injured or to overtrain or to peak too early. So this is definitely, pun intended, a marathon, not a sprint. So I would say start slowly and use a training program or have a plan. Those are probably the two biggest tips that I would espouse.
For the actual race, hydration, and as you said, nutrition and hydration. You make sure they're going to have, obviously, every mile they have tables. So I think race day, is a different thing than the training. But so availing yourself of the hydration during the race. Some people use, and this may not be quite a long enough race to warrant it, but these gels that have carbohydrates and sugars to give you a boost. But hydration during it, and sometimes hydration with electrolytes. So if you are too aggressive in your hydration, then you can unwittingly cause other types of problems with hyponatremia, that sort of thing. So so those are the types of things I would suggest to a beginner like myself. Okay. Well, that sounds just right. Anything else we want to say about that? I mean, the study that I mentioned, I don't know if you read it, is that obviously makes sense?
It does. I mean, I would say I wouldn't over sort of think it too much. It was a relatively small study, but it does sort of add to the body of evidence and perhaps provides a little bit more of a mechanism of probably one of the many ways that exercise is good. I think the caveats being it looked at healthy people, so we don't necessarily know that this translates immediately to people maybe with more risk factors or underlying cardiovascular disease. No real reason not to think that. But no, I think it's encouraging, and it adds to the body of evidence on the benefits of exercise. So in this case, the compliance or the ability to relax of the big blood vessels and the impact on blood pressure seem to be the main mechanisms. And those are both important things for sure.
Great, fantastic. And now I think I'm going to turn you over to my colleague Peter for the other topic. And thank you very much again, Dr. St. John.
Thank you.
If we don't talk
Appreciate
again,
it.
I'll send you the article. I'm going to write something about your preparation for the training,
All right.
your tips, and then I'll send it to you maybe tomorrow or Monday, hopefully as soon as I can.
Right.
So you can give it a quick look. Now I turn you over to Peter for the other topic. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Let me scoot over.